What up, YouTube? This is Steven, and welcome back to another video. This video is going to be a response to YouTube users Chrissie's video entitled, "Are Dark Women and Light Men Alliances in Fighting Colorism?" Basically, for those of you who may not be familiar with Chrissie, by the way, Chrissie's like an up-and-coming YouTuber. She's getting more and more popular, by the second, pretty much. And she posts a lot of videos about colorism, and some folks don't like that. Me personally, I do like that. I do like that she has, videos about colorism and, creates dialogue and sparks discussions about colorism within the Black community. I think, that's sort of like an issue that I think, we as a community sort of like sweep under the rug, because I think it's difficult for us to talk about colorism because like a lot of us are kind of like implicated in colorism and, so many more reasons. So yeah, Chrissie, she does a lot of videos about colorism as it relates to the Black community, as well as it relates to dark-skinned women. And, I've watched like a lot of her videos, and I think that she really does hit the target, a lot of times, like really well, in the things that she says about colorism. So, Chrissie is back with, her latest video. And in this video, she's posing the question and presenting the question, are dark-skinned Black women and light-skinned Black men allies in fighting colorism? And, I feel like ultimately we as a community, as a whole, including, all included, all shades included, dark-skinned women, dark-skinned men, light-skinned women, light-skinned men, I think we all should be allies in fighting, against colorism. We should. But unfortunately, this question does have to be asked because it's not like that, unfortunately. A lot of people don't seem to want to, not everyone, but, a good amount of people seem to be kind of like just content on things being the way that they are. And, it sucks that Chrissie has to even ask this question. It sucks that dark-skinned women even have to ask this question. That sucks, but also the answer to the question sucks even more. I will say on an individual level, I do think that, light-skinned men and dark-skinned women, are allies, at least on an individual level. As a collective, I don't think so, And Chrissie gave her personal opinion about why she thinks that is, why she believes that ultimately, dark-skinned women and light-skinned men aren't allies. And she gave her reason, and while she was giving her reason, it kind of related to her upcoming magazine, Divine Dark Skin. I think it's called Divine Dark Skin Magazine. And she said that she was speaking with a few light-skinned men about it. Not a lot, but a few. And, 2 out of 3 of those men said, basically they didn't seem like they were on board with the magazine, and she felt like they weren't on board ultimately because they felt like, light-skinned men have sort of like somewhat of an allegiance to light-skinned women and don't want to support anything that would be kind of like detrimental to lighter skinned women. And I feel like personally, I don't think there's much of an allegiance between light-skinned men and light-skinned women. I actually think there's more of an allegiance between dark-skinned women and light-skinned men, you know. But however, I will say that Chrissie does have sort of a point. And, you know, me personally, like, when I first heard of the idea of the Divine Dark Skin magazine, I was like, oh, that sounds cool, you know? A magazine for dark-skinned women. However, I did arrive at a point when I was like, should I support this? You know? And I kind of asked that question because I felt like I might be sort of contributing to, I guess, maybe my own erasure in a way. I mean, I would say, like, at this point, I do support what Chrissie is doing as far as, like, the magazine and pretty much as far as all the things that she's doing. But I will admit I was sort of had that question pop up in my mind too, because, you know, you don't want to contribute to your own erasure. And I kind of felt like at that time, you know, this could be a bit, you know, quote unquote divisive, you know. I could be contributing to, you know, I guess the erasure of like lighter skinned people. But ultimately, no, like that's not going to happen. Like the Divine Dark Skin magazine isn't going to be erasing anybody, you know. It's going to help end erasure. That's the thing, you know. And I think ultimately, that's a part of colorism. It's like, I think that's a part of some people's reason why they're kind of like hanging, somewhat hesitant to deal with colorism, especially like lighter skinned women. And I think it's because they feel like maybe they're going to contribute to their own erasure. And I guess like things are going to like reverse and they're going to be kind of like the targets of colorism. But ultimately, it's going to end erasure, you know. It's not going to erase lighter skinned people. It's going to end erasure, you know? So, you know, it took me a minute to get to that point, but, you know, I'm at that point now, and, you know, I'm definitely, you know, understand and support, Chrissie and, you know, what she does as far as, you know, being a colorism activist. I think she has, self-proclaimed herself as a colorism activist, you know. But Chrissie brought up like a lot of good, interesting points that I want to talk about in this video. In her video, she brought up a lot of points, and I just want to go through some of the points that she brought up and give my personal opinion about it, or about them. Excuse me. You know, the first point that she kind of brought up was about pro-blacks and colorism. Chrissie says that the pro-black community and, you know, the pro-blacks within it do a poor job of addressing colorism and really don't even address colorism at all a lot of the times. And I agree with Chrissie on that. I can't really think of a pro-black person who's really addressed colorism, you know, because pro-black people definitely address racism without any hesitation. But when it comes to colorism, it's like all of a sudden is like folks get real quiet about it. You know, it's like, And I don't know as far as like the pro-black women are concerned, but I think when it comes to the pro-black men, they're kind of like, everyone's black. If you got one drop of black blood in you, you're black. And, that rule, the one drop rule, which was turned into law at one point, that was given to us by white supremacy. So it is a little strange that, pro-blacks are kind of using white supremacist, rules, logic, whatever you want to call it, to determine who and who is not black. And then I know that some pro-black folks are going to argue and be like, no, it's biology, But really, think about it. If you have someone who is an eighth white, well, scratch that, who is 1/8 black and 7/8 white, how do you think they're going to look? Let's keep it real. I mean, I know black jeans are all that in a bag of chips and, very strong, very dominant, very robust, But let's keep it real. 1/8 of black versus 7/8 of white. Which side of the coin do you think that the person is going to end up on? The white side or the black side? Let's keep it real. They're going to end up looking white. They may have like a little hint of a something. And, some black folks going to be trying to hold on to that, But ultimately, they're going to look white, And, to bring this back to the question, or, to bring this back to what Chrissie was saying, like, yeah, I do agree with Chrissie. Pro-black people do kind of seem quiet about things. And I think that's, when it comes to the men, at least, I think it's because, like, I think they kind of want to get with, like, light-skinned and mixed women. I think that's a part of it. So it's like, we all black. So if the colorism issue comes up, then it's like, no, we all black. We all black. And there's no difference, even though we all may check black/African American on, when we have to identify ourselves by race, on forms or whatever. But, our skin differences do determine our experiences within the community and society in general, but also in the community. So, I do agree with Chrissie on that. Pro-blacks do a poor job of addressing colorism. Another point that Chrissie brought up that was kind of funny to me, kind of a little like cute and funny and a little interesting, was she brought up interracial pornography, interracial adult films, and how, dark-skinned black men are often portrayed in those films. And I will say I do agree with her on her opinion of that. However, light-skinned men are surprisingly portrayed in interracial porn as well, and they are portrayed as black men in interracial porn. They never really they're not, oh, this is a mixed man. Like, they don't do that when it comes to light-skinned or mixed men in porn. They just pass them off as a black man. Like, in the industry, the guy is considered a black man. And I kind of like bring this up to just say that ultimately, when it comes to like interracial porn with black men and white women, they're going for more of the Beauty and the Beast type of thing, that type of theme. Like, oh, this, fair maiden, this fair white, beautiful maiden gets ravished by this big black beast, And ultimately, I just bring this up to say that, light-skinned men do get fetishized when it comes to the adult film industry as well, you know. And I'm a bit surprised that they would kind of even really consider light-skinned men to an extent when it comes to interracial porn, just because, like, you know, black men, you know, dark-skinned black men are considered like the face of black men. You know, when you think of black men, you think of dark-skinned black men. So that was a bit of a surprise for me. You know, it's a bit surprising that they would kind of even consider light-skinned men to an extent, you know. But long story short, you know, not to be lewd or anything, but, you know, light-skinned men in the adult film industry do kind of get pretty much the same treatment as dark-skinned black men, to keep it real. More or less the same treatment. And I probably could do a whole video on that theme alone, but I'm not sure if I should. Another point that I want to bring up that Chrissie spoke about is dark-skinned male promotion in the media. And I do agree with Chrissie. Like, when you think of, like, a black man, you know, dark-skinned men come into mind, and that's because of the media promotion, you know. While, you know, there are light-skinned men in the media, it's more so about like dark-skinned men, though. And I think that plays a part in women's preferences, which Chrissie also spoke about in the video. I think that does play a part in the preferences. The media definitely, you know. And also I kind of think like some women, like, even if a black woman does have a preference for lighter skinned men, I don't think she will express that preference. She'll just keep that preference to herself, because she doesn't want to come off as like, oh, you know, she's like self-hating, or she's color struck, or she's a sellout, or, you know, like all those negative things, you know, attached to you know, black people who like people who don't look like them, you know. You know, I think black, you know, dark-skinned men are a bit more open about their preference for lighter-skinned women, because it's almost kind of like, well, who's gonna check me, right? Like, maybe to a little bit, like, you know, who's really gonna check black men about their preference? Light-skinned women ain't, when it comes to, like, you know, dark-skinned men having a preference for lighter-skinned women. Like, light-skinned women ain't gonna check the preference, definitely. Light-skinned men, no, they're not gonna check it. Usually it's dark-skinned women checking, you know, checking that, and like, hey, like, what's up with that, you know? But when it comes to a black woman having a preference for a lighter skinned man, I think that dark skinned men will check her, but also dark skinned women will check her as well. Or just black women in general, but you know, darker skinned women will check her as well, you know. So basically, I think, you know, even if a black woman does have a preference for a lighter skinned men, she'll probably just end up keeping that preference to herself, you know, because she doesn't want to, like, alienate herself from the community, you know. And also one thing I noticed, like, usually, like, black women don't really put light skin, like, black women in general, especially dark-skinned black women, don't put light-skinned men on a pedestal, you know. Really, they put dark-skinned men on a pedestal. Really. And I think it's just, the reason for that is very nuanced, and I probably could do a whole video about the reasons why that is the way it is. But I want to move on to the next point that Chrissie brought up in her video, which is the issue of colorism and how some people think it's only a dark-skinned woman's issue, dark-skinned female's issue. And ultimately, if this really, it should be like, if it affects one member of the community, then it affects the entire community. I don't see black women splitting hairs and acting like, oh, police brutality is just a black male issue, And it does seem like sometimes when black men, are in trouble, black women, they down, they there, they ready to help, do whatever it takes. But it seems like when black women are in trouble sometimes, it seems like, I don't know, like the protection ain't there for black women. Like black men don't seem to be coming out as strong when black women feel like, they being came for, versus how black women react when black men are being attacked or, came for, or whatever you want to call it. And I just think that ultimately it's just because I think like when it's a black male issue, it's considered a black issue, just black issue in general. Like this is an issue that the community deals with. But when it affects black women, it just seems, oh, this is a black woman issue. So it doesn't seem like it's, on the top of the to-do list, since it's more so about black women, especially dark-skinned black women. But ultimately, it's like colorism affects the entire community. It affects everyone. Even if they're not vocal about it, it does affect everyone just in different ways. It affects dark-skinned women, dark-skinned men, light-skinned women, light-skinned men. It affects everybody, And this is an issue for the community to deal with. And in order to deal with this issue, we need everyone present, Oftentimes when we do have conversations about colorism, it's usually like, like on the OWN network, for instance, it's usually like a dark-skinned females, light-skinned females. They don't really seem to want to include black men in the conversation, which if you really want to get to the bottom of colorism, you need to include everyone, not just the women, And oftentimes when they do include black men, it's usually just dark-skinned black men. So the dynamic is dark-skinned woman, dark-skinned men, light-skinned woman. They usually don't want to include light-skinned men on this discussion for some reason, or for one reason or another. I don't see them included as much. I know there probably are some examples, but the major examples that I've seen, I haven't seen them included. So long story short, if you really want to get to the bottom of colorism, everyone needs to be present on these conversations. And I don't think Chrissie mentioned that. So I'm just, putting that out there. I think, my personal opinion, I think that, again, if we really want to get to the bottom of colorism and solve this issue, or at least go, move in the right direction to solving this issue, then we have to address it from all points, all people's, perspective and experiences, and include everyone in the conversation. Because a lot of times when these conversations come up, it ends up circling back to black men, like, oh, like these, dark-skinned women are attacking this light-skinned woman. It's this light-skinned chick because like they jealous, that she getting men, and I know that's not like the general case, like every, I know that every dark-skinned woman does not attack light-skinned women or feel, jealous or threatened by light-skinned women or anything like that. But I'm just saying, like, that does come up in the conversation sometimes, where it's like, oh, like, these dark-skinned women are jealous of these light-skinned women because they're getting the men that the dark-skinned women want and feel like they are entitled to, Well, we don't have any rebuttal from the men, so it's just become like a just women talking. And, it's nothing wrong with women talking, but it's just like, well, we need more of, another point of view, All right, next point that Christie brought up in this video is light-skinned black men and dark-skinned black women, like light-skinned men sometimes pursuing dark-skinned women in order to sort of, declare themselves as like black and proud, And I feel like that is sort of like an underlying reason, maybe that's not the correct phrase, but I feel like that's a part of it, that plays a part in it, I feel like that's the same thing, especially for light-skinned black women pursuing dark-skinned men. I feel definitely with that, and I also feel it with light-skinned men and dark-skinned women. Just, I guess, somehow I think like maybe like light-skinned people wanting to show that, they're really down, they're down because, when you, get with someone, it's like, you view this person as, I guess like, good enough or worthy enough to be a part of your family, I guess. Maybe like something like that though, but yeah, I know what Chrissie is talking about. I guess in my personal, experience and when it comes to my preferences, I guess I would agree with that. I think I tended to gravitate towards like women who are darker than me, usually. Specifically black women who are darker than me, And I know Christie also brought up a point about light-skinned men not really being, so, dazzled by light-skinned women's beauty. And I feel like, that is a part of it too, because, light-skinned men kind of like have those same features. So it's not like something that's like a wow factor for them, But maybe when it comes to like dark-skinned men, it is maybe sort of more like a, like, oh, it's like sort of like, I guess, mesmerizing, like, wow, look at her light skin and, her, curly hair, like long curly hair or something, But when it comes to light-skinned men, those features aren't, I guess, as impressive. But I will say, I have seen some light-skinned women. I'm like, oh, right, like, hey, like she looking good, But I feel like it kind of has to take a little something extra, Another point that Chrissie brought up is the relationship or the dynamics between dark-skinned black men and light-skinned black men. And I thought that was pretty interesting to, because I feel like ultimately, like, I feel like light-skinned men in general support dark-skinned men. In general, I don't really hear about like light-skinned man being like, oh, that dark-skinned dude is like, like he's like, a good basketball player and I'm going to hate on him. Like kind of like sometimes they do with maybe like Steph Curry or something, on occasions. But to be fair, there are dark-skinned men who do support Steph Curry, But I do feel like, again, light-skinned men in general do support dark-skinned men. As far as the other way around, I think so, but sometimes I do think there's some animosity that comes up when it comes to dark-skinned men. um, in relation with lighter skinned men. In my personal experience back in like grade school, thinking about the people who kind of like threw shade or gave me any type of trouble. Usually it was, now that I think about it, it was kind of like, dark skinned dudes. But, thankfully, like I wasn't in that space where it was like dark skin versus light skin type of thing. So I kind of saw it more so on the individual level. So I was just like, oh, that person. It's just that person versus like, the whole person, the person in their entire skin tone, or their, what I'm saying? Like the person as well as everyone that has their skin tone are like that. Thankfully, I wasn't like that. And as well, I've had great experiences interacting with dark-skinned men as well, But I will say if all my experiences with dark-skinned men were negative, then I would have a different attitude, And, back to my point, yeah, light-skinned men definitely support dark-skinned men, partly because they are the face of black men. As well, like I can even give some examples if you want, like, Jesse Williams speaking out about police brutality, Colin Kaepernick, protesting police brutality. Heck, Chris Brown has even spoken out about racism, very bluntly about it as well, and, and to be fair, when, those guys were attacked, when Chris Brown had that little situation with that shady white woman who wanted to lie on him. There were black men, dark-skinned men included, who, came to his defense about that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, ultimately I think, in my personal experience, I've had some good experiences and I had some bad experiences, right? As far as like interacting with dark-skinned men, is concerned. Ultimately, the good experiences, outweigh the bad experiences. I'm not, like that person dark-skinned, that dude dark-skinned, so I'm not gonna fool with him. Like, thankfully, no, I'm not at that point, and I hopefully will never get to that point. And I hope that there are no dark-skinned men at the point where they just had bad experiences with light-skinned dudes, I can only speak from my perspective. I feel like I don't think that dark-skinned men would really have like a major story about being mistreated by light-skinned dudes. Partially because the odds are in dark-skinned men's favor. Like the numbers are. Like, think about it. Like, how many dark-skinned men do you encounter in the black community versus how many light-skinned men you encounter in the community? Yeah, exactly. Like, there's way more dark-skinned men than light-skinned men. So I feel like light-skinned men would be more likely to be the victim when it comes to interactions between light-skinned men and dark-skinned men, because the numbers are in their favor. If something pops off, then like dark-skinned men have the numbers, to defend themselves, and it seems like the community is kind of like ran by dark-skinned men, and I don't really have an issue with that. I think that's how it should be, but I'm just saying, I think dark-skinned men sort of have set the tone in a way, in some instances, as far as like dark-skinned men, like specifically targeting light-skinned men, I think it could possibly have to do with a few things. Like, one, it could be like the light-skinned dude is reminiscent of a white man, maybe. I think that's sort of like an underlying theme, or like underlying something or another. that isn't really touched on, but I think it might have to do something like that. Oh, you remind me of like whiteness. So, like, and I think that's might be why like some dark skinned men gravitate towards light skinned women, because they remind them of whiteness. They are reminiscent of whiteness. I think that's, a part of it. Another issue, or another reason why I think that dark skinned men perhaps would be likely to target light skinned men is because, well, light skinned men don't really have much protection, in the community. And as well, I think dark skinned men probably want, this is going to sound a little bad, but it's not meant to demonize dark skinned men in anything like that. But I think they might want to like have someone to put their foot on, like someone that they can put their foot on their neck. That saying. Like they want someone to sort of perhaps oppress, maybe, but to a lesser extent, like someone to exert power over. Like someone to exert their power over, And light-skinned men are the perfect target for that, because like light-skinned men are sort of in a way privileged by having lighter skin. So it's like an underprivileged person going towards a privileged person. So it's not, people aren't going to react the same way, and dark skinned men do exert their power over black women, but I think when it's a man exerting his power over another man, it's probably a little bit more satisfying. Even it speaks a bit more to his power and strength, and again, just a bit more satisfying to kind of like exert power and to exert it over a man versus a woman. But there's so many, so much that I could probably say about that issue as well, but that issue would be another video. Like Chrissie bringing up all these things in this video that could like spin off into another video. Like so much of this stuff she's bringing up, I'm like, dang, like Chrissie be hitting, I'm telling you. So long story short about animosity between light-skinned dudes and dark-skinned dudes, I think that the animosity could come from like a number of things. It could come from having resentment, like dark-skinned men having resentment towards light-skinned men because they feel like they maybe are a bit more privileged than them, Could come from dark-skinned dudes feeling like light-skinned dudes are like, too reminiscent of white men. It could just be like, hey, I want to like oppress somebody, and this is the perfect person to oppress. So many different issues, or so many different reasons that it could be, I can't say, in my personal experience, I can't say why, the dark-skinned dudes that I've interacted with, or some of them, not all of them, but, some of them back in like grade school, I can't say for sure why they, threw shade my way or, whatnot. I can't say for sure, but other than just maybe just animosity in general over and just your presence and possibly the privilege that is attached to like lighter skinned people. But again, it's a case by case basis. So, it could just have been, they just didn't like me, they just didn't like the way I look, like, take out skin color, just didn't like you, sometimes you just don't like folks, All right. Let's see. Another point that Chrissie brought up is light-skinned men dating preferences in regards to color, tone, and race. And this is in regards to kind of like how if a lighter skinned man is dating outside the race, it isn't like black women don't seem to react as negatively, you know? And I have noticed that, like, you know, and not even just dating outside of the race, but just dating like a lighter skin, like his light skinned counterpart, you know? Like, for example, like Jesse Williams and his wife. His wife is light skinned, and he's light skinned. You know, he's mixed. I think she is light skinned, and I think he is mixed, but also has light skin. And you know, no black women were tripping over that, you know. But if Jesse Williams was a really dark skinned man, they might have something to say about that. You know, they might be like, "Oh, you color struck," you know. Why ain't you with a you know, a dark skinned woman? And I do notice that like black women kind of let light skinned dudes slide, and it could be because, well, they're not interested in the light skinned dude anyway. It could be because maybe they feel like, well, you know, he is like mixed or something, so they may feel like they don't have a total claim on him like they feel with dark skinned men, because like with dark skinned men, like both parents are black, but with lighter skinned black dudes, one parent could be white, one parent could be black, or both parents could be black, but just there's a skin tone difference. So it's a bit more ambiguous there. So, you know, it's kind of like harder to regulate, you know. I'll say in my personal experience, I will say like, I was having a conversation, with, you know, some black females, and they were like brown skin, and like the topic of like kind of like, skin tone preference came up, you know, and I think they kind of got the feeling that I didn't have a preference towards like, or like, I think they got the preference that I had a preference towards like white or really light skinned women, which is not the case. And they was like, you know, they kind of you know, gave me a little flack for it a little bit, you know, kind of like in a joking way. But you know, I let them know, like, you know, brown is definitely good. You know, brown is my preference, you know. So like in my personal experience, like, you know, I have sort of been, you know, challenged in a way, you know, or regulated in a way to an extent. But I do understand where Chrissie is coming from when she says, like, you know, black women don't seem to be tripping when lighter skinned men do what, you know, when lighter skinned men date, you know, racially ambiguous and non-black women. But I think when it comes to dark skinned men, I think black women in general, especially dark skinned black women, they feel like that. I think they feel like, you know, that dark skinned men are for them, you know, because they're both dark skinned. And I can't argue against that. You know, so I feel like since they feel like, oh, we are for each other, you know, so I think that's why they have that, you know, dark skinned women have that reaction when it comes to dark skinned men. Well, black women in general have that reaction when it comes to dark skinned men. Let's see. The last point that I want to address that Chrissie brought up is the Divine Dark Skin magazine and allyship. And I think I've already mentioned this as well. And I, you know, again, I had to sort of like, you know, check myself, like, hey, like, why do I think this way? You know, why am I thinking this way? Because, you know, at one point I was like, yeah, you know, that seems like a good idea. But then at another point later on, I was like, this might not be a good idea. Maybe, you know, I don't know if I could, you know, so, you know, I'm not sure if I feel offended by this or not. And again, I had to think, you know, I had to think about it a little bit. And I said, you know, why do I feel the way I do? And for me personally, I just felt like maybe it might end up like kind of like maybe erasing light-skinned people to an extent, but ultimately I don't think that will happen. I think that the Divine Dark Skin magazine will help end erasure, not promote erasure. And I think that's the same with racism and colorism. In general, ending racism isn't going, like, when racism, or if racism ends, like, it won't be reversed, it'll just end. Same with colorism. It'll just wipe it away. There's kind of like when it comes to like when we talk about white supremacy, and I think sometimes some white people feel like, oh, if white supremacy ends, then it's like the genocide of them. But no, it's the end of genocide. And I think that same concept can be applied to all this. So, I think I said pretty much all I have to say, at least for the time being. There's so many more things that I could say, but this video is already long enough. So basically, I just wanted to give a response to Chrissie's video, because Chrissie has uploaded and released like many interesting videos about colorism. And I think this video in particular, it just really prompted me to make a response. Because I feel like, I think black male voices are needed, but especially light-skinned black male voices, just because you don't really tend to hear from light-skinned black males a lot when it comes to really a lot of things, but especially colorism. And, trust me, we all got a story to tell about colorism, and this is not directed at Chrissie, but it's just directed to dark-skinned women in general. Don't feel ashamed or embarrassed to speak out against colorism, especially the colorism that you experience, because trust me, when dark-skinned men feel like they getting the brunt of colorism due to light-skinned men, they're gonna speak out. And the thing is, I think like dark-skinned black women especially will support them. But it seems like when dark-skinned black women speak out about colorism, it doesn't seem like the support is there as much. Not saying that all, but it doesn't seem like the support is there as much when dark-skinned women are speaking out. So, long story short, don't feel ashamed or embarrassed to speak out about colorism, no matter who you are, but especially if you are a dark-skinned, black woman. Because trust me, again, when dark-skinned men feel like light-skinned men are threatening their position, are a threat to them in some way, they speak out about it. They will speak out about it. And, dark-skinned women will support them speaking out about it. So, again, just, continue to speak out, because really a lot of times you don't know that someone's going through something until they sort of say something, A lot of times you just assume that people are just, fine the way they are, but we don't really know, the pain and the struggles and, people's personal struggles that they go through until they let us know. We might be able to pick up on it, perhaps, if we really are, looking and in tune, and seeing signs. But, oftentimes, we don't know. So I know, like, when you speak out about colorism, there's like so much, backlash. But I say, like, People gonna support you though. There's gonna be some people who support you. And I will put it out there that, I'll do what I can do in the position that I'm in as, a light-skinned person, as well as a lighter-skinned man, to do what I can do to help, combat colorism and to support darker skinned people, especially darker skinned women, in their fight against colorism. Well, I think I've said all I have to say for the time being. So thanks a lot for watching, you guys. Feel free to comment, feel free to subscribe, feel free to give me a thumbs up. Feedback and support are extremely appreciated and extremely valued. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.